haunting mystery of the Miyazawa family. It was a quiet winter night in the Setagaya ward of Tokyo, December 30th, 2000. The festive lights twinkled from every house in the neighborhood, signaling the joyful anticipation of the new year. In a modest two-story home nestled in this peaceful neighborhood lived the Miyazawa family. Mikio, the father, a kind and hardworking man, spent his days providing for his family. Yasuko, his wife, was a loving mother, devoted to raising their two young children, Nina, an 8-year-old girl full of curiosity, and little Rei, just 6, whose laughter was a constant source of joy in the house. The Miyazawas had chosen this quiet suburb of Setagaya to raise their children, hoping the tranquil surroundings would provide them with safety, security, and a peaceful life. However, on that fateful night, a storm of unimaginable horror descended upon their home. As the moon bathed the streets in its cold light, a figure approached the Miyazawa house. A shadow slipped unnoticed into the neighborhood. To this day, no one knows how this person entered their home, but what happened inside that house remains one of Japan's most disturbing mysteries. The Miyazawa family went about their evening, completely unaware of the impending danger. The children were likely tucked into their beds, as their parents finished their final chores of the day. But what was to come would shatter this serene night into a nightmare. Sometime during the late hours of the night, an intruder made their way into the Miyazawa home. It's believed that Mikio, ever the protector, was the first to confront the stranger. A struggle ensued, but Mikio never stood a chance. He fought valiantly, but the intruder, armed with a knife, unleashed a savage attack. Mikio was beaten and stabbed repeatedly, his lifeless body left on the first floor of the home. Yet, this was just the beginning of the horror. The intruder then climbed to the second floor, where Yasuko and the children slept. First, the killer turned his attention to young Rei, the sweet boy, who was still peacefully asleep in his bed. With chilling calculation, the murderer took Rei's life while the boy slept, suffocating him in cold silence. Next, he moved to Yasuko and Nina, mother and daughter. Perhaps awakened by the commotion, they were met with the horrifying sight of the intruder. They tried to defend themselves, but the attacker was relentless. Both Yasuko and Nina were stabbed repeatedly, their bodies left intertwined in a final embrace. In their last moments, they must have tried to protect each other, but their efforts were in vain. The Miyazawa family was gone, their once warm and loving home now stained with blood and tragedy. But what happened next defies explanation. Most killers flee the scene of their crime, escaping into the darkness. But this one lingered. For hours, the intruder roamed the Miyazawa home. As if nothing had happened, he rummaged through their belongings, ate ice cream from their refrigerator, and even used the family's computer to browse the internet. In an eerie and almost surreal act, he stayed, calm and unhurried as if he had all the time in the world. He left behind traces of his presence, fingerprints, blood, and even his clothing, but it seemed he didn't care. It was as if the home now belonged to him, as if this horrifying act had given him some twisted sense of ownership. And then, as dawn approached, he simply vanished into the night, leaving behind no clues to his identity except for the devastation in his wake. The next morning, Yasuko's mother, who lived nearby, became concerned when she couldn't reach her daughter. She decided to visit the house, perhaps wondering why the family had gone silent. What she discovered would haunt her forever. The house was eerily quiet, but the scene she walked into was nothing short of a nightmare. Her beloved family was gone, their lives cruelly stolen in the night. The police were called, and soon the entire neighborhood was buzzing with disbelief. How could such a brutal crime happen in their quiet suburb? Who could have done this? The police quickly began their investigation, and what they found was puzzling. The killer had left behind more evidence than they could have imagined. Fingerprints, footprints, blood, and even personal items like a hip bag and clothing. It was as if the perpetrator wanted to be found. They uncovered DNA, which suggested the killer was of mixed East Asian descent, with traces of European lineage. But despite this wealth of evidence, the identity of the murderer remained a mystery. Thousands of people were questioned, every lead explored, but no arrests were made. The intruder, whoever he was, seemed to have vanished without a trace. The Miyazawa family was laid to rest, but the question still lingers. Who would want to kill an innocent family in such a brutal manner? The community was left in shock, their sense of safety forever shattered. The horror of that night continues to haunt them, as the memory of the Miyazawa family remains etched into the history of Setagaya. Over 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved. The house, now abandoned, stands as a haunting reminder of the tragedy. It is frozen in time, a monument to a night of unspeakable violence that has yet to find justice. The Setagaya family murders have become one of Japan's most chilling, unsolved cases. With all the evidence left behind, the killer seemed like someone who wanted to be caught, yet he has eluded justice for over 20 years. Who was this shadow that snuffed out the lives of an innocent family? The answer remains hidden, buried in the secrets of that dark winter night.